Tonight on News 5 Live, results are expected later tonight on a batch of 300 samples countrywide. So far, 120 active COVID-19 cases. In Belize City, a teacher has contracted the virus. She and a pharmacist take to social media to describe their painful experience. Dr. Marvin Manzanero responds to the Belize Medical and Dental Association regarding COVID-19 and frontline health workers. The body of a Honduran national was discovered in a shallow grave on a farm in Steadfast Village. A man is killed in Belize City when a GSU vehicle ran him over. And the Belmopan Nazarene church is vandalized with gang tags and several bullets are found on the grounds. Police say it is random graffiti and not a targeted act. Details of these stories and more coming up in tonight's newscast.
I'm sure you heard of Smart's new loyalty rewards
evening. Welcome to News 5 Live for Monday, August 10th. I am Marlene Cuellar. Additional cases of COVID-19 are expected to be diagnosed in the days ahead as contact tracing and testing are ongoing, so the next few days will be critical. An outbreak of COVID-19 was recorded last week in parts of the country, including Guinea Grass, Santa Marta, Shipyard, and San Pedro, where states of emergencies have been put in place. Earlier today, the Ministry of Health commenced the testing of a batch of approximately 300 samples for COVID-19, and those results are expected to be released by Tuesday. It follows an extraction process that was conducted over the weekend in the wake of a rash of coronavirus infections in San Pedro, as well as the Orange Walk and Corozal districts last week. On Saturday, another positive case was detected in Belize City, and that patient was hospitalized and subsequently discharged from the Carl Huchner Memorial Hospital a day later. According to the Director of Health Services, Dr. Marvin Manzanero, there are 3 clusters that the ministry is actively following. 2 of those clusters, from the Living Word Church and a Medina's construction site, are reported in San Pedro, where there is community spread. Dr. Manzanero provides the most recent information.
I do know that over the last 3 days, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we had a significant number of cases, with clusters eventually showing up more in Orange Walk and in San Pedro. To date, we have identified 3 specific clusters in San Pedro. And of course, once you start having more cases come out from those clusters, then it's going to be difficult for you to say to which cluster they really belong. So we categorize it as community transmission for San Pedro town, given that we are already having or seeing possible links between clusters that were going there. To date, we have more than 50 active cases in San Pedro, and we have more than 100 samples to be processed from San Pedro and Belize City. We are following 3 clusters in San Pedro. I think the one that has the potential to get out or has already moved out is the one related to a construction site. The church situation in San Pedro, I think, is an easier one in the sense that it has pretty much managed to reach that specific congregation and swabs taken. In terms of case number 57 that gave us 18 samples, remember this is 2-3 weeks ago. But the people who are from the construction site who don't live on the island and who may have left or who have left are the ones that we are primarily looking for, and most of those are men who live in northern villages, Orange Walk primarily, and some in Corozal villages. For now, we should be able to be testing all the symptomatics. Granted, there will be a point in time when if you have one confirmed positive in a family, they are living together, then probably the next 5 or 6 ill in the same family, you probably don't have to test them.
Following an outbreak in cases of the coronavirus, schools around the country were ordered to remain closed as a containment measure. So instead of being in the classrooms today, the students were at home. In a Belize City school, however, where preparations were underway for the scheduled reopening, a teacher tested positive for the virus. Vanessa Gladden confirmed her status on Facebook, and contact tracing is ongoing. Here is News 5's Isani Caetano with the latest report.
Today was the initially scheduled start of the 2020 academic calendar. Across the country, schools were already being prepared for classrooms to receive new cohorts of students. This morning, windows and doors remained shut and school grounds were bereft of that first day of school aura that would have been August 10th. It will stay that way indefinitely until the Ministries of Health and Education are satisfied that it is safe for students and teachers to return to their respective classrooms. A recent flare-up of COVID-19 cases in certain parts of the country has forced government to postpone the reopening of schools until further notice. At All Saints School, a lower division teacher has tested positive for coronavirus, and a contact tracing exercise has since commenced to determine the number of persons, if any, who came within physical distance of her. In a social media post by Vanessa Gladden, the infected educator says that her diagnosis came as a complete surprise since, admittedly, she is a proponent of mask wearing, social distancing, and proper hygiene. So how did she contract the disease, and how many persons were exposed to the illness by Gladden? In a release issued by the Diocesan Education Board, an arm of the Anglican Diocese of Belize, on Saturday, the management of All Saints School has reached out to teachers who may have shared the same space with Gladden anywhere between August 3rd and 5th. According to the board, her colleagues have given all assurances that strict procedures were followed during their time at school last week. The Ministry of Health is yet to make that determination based on an actual mapping exercise. For her part, Gladden describes her symptoms as often unbearable, saying, quote, "I am trying my best to keep calm and carry through with my treatment," unquote. Elsewhere, she also speaks to the stigma associated with COVID-19, a sign of social unacceptability where the deadly pandemic is concerned. As far as All Saints School, Principal Colin Estrada, we understand, has declined comment. Nonetheless, arrangements are underway to sanitize the school. The decision by government not to reopen schools today preceded this new case. However, it underscores the need for the involvement of all stakeholders. Reporting for News 5, I am Isana Cayetano.
So while further results are expected, there is presently a total lockdown in the Mennonite community of Shipyard in Orange Walk District, where 12 cases have been recorded from a single family. Santa Marta, also in the north, has 8 cases, and the case in Stan Creek is believed to be related. In Belize City, as we've mentioned, there is the case of Vanessa Gladden. Contact tracing for these new cases are ongoing, and according to DHS Manzanero, are dependent on the results.
From Shipyard, we have a cluster that we identified on Friday, Saturday of, I believe, 12. But they are all one single family. So even when you look at the numbers in Orange Walk, you have one big cluster of 12. The Santa Marta cluster has about 8 now. 3 of those may be out of Santa Marta now. The case in Stan Creek district that we reported is a family of the initial cluster identified in Santa Marta. So the mapping of those particular cases is pretty much concluded. I think the ones we are following right now are the ones in San Pedro who have left. And that's the concern, because if you are in the island of San Pedro, even though you're from the construction site, well, you know, it's under lockdown, you shouldn't be moving out.
Yeah.
But it's the ones that moved out. In Belize City, we identified, I believe, 3 cases from the Friday batch, and those would be linked to San Pedro, 1 linked to Orange Walk, but contact tracing yesterday, today, and the early part of this week can also give you a general sense of where we are going. Concern are also police officers. Yesterday you heard of a teacher and 6 health personnel that have turned out positive as well.
On Saturday, the Belize Medical and Dental Association issued a statement regarding frontline health workers who they claim were exposed to COVID-19 in the line of duty. DHS Manzanero has responded to the release and provided clarity on how those individuals contracted the virus, aside from stating that 3 of them are not employees of the Ministry of Health.
That press release wasn't really consulted with anybody, as far as I know, from the Ministry of Health. I'm not sure what specifically they are referring to in terms of a doctor being forced to work under such conditions. On the score that 3 of the personnel are not from the Ministry of Health.
3 of those who tested positive.
Yes, 2 doctors and a nurse are from private sector alone. They don't work in public sector. 1 pharmacist from health, 1 nurse from health, and 1 doctor from health are the ones who have turned out positive. The pharmacist who turned out positive was actually on vacation. He had just come back to work and was symptomatic. So we don't anticipate that he got infected in I mean, the incubation period wouldn't really add up to the time frame. The doctor and the nurse, both in Ranjiwak, have not been caring, have not been the first line caregivers of those identified cases that we know that are in the system, that are hospitalized then. So we are also not thinking that they are getting infected in the within the health system.
In San Pedro, 14 officers attached to the San Pedro police station are in isolation. Of those 14, 5 have tested positive for COVID-19, 3 of whom are on the island, while the other 2 are on the mainland. The remaining officers are exhibiting flu-like symptoms. Today, Officer in Command in San Pedro, Superintendent Chris Noble, says that it is unclear from where or which cluster the officers contracted the virus. Noble says that the department has been providing as much support to the officers as is possible.
We have 5 infected, 3 are on the island, 2 are off the island. They were symptomatic, they are now asymptomatic, and I have 6 more, 6 and 3, 9 more that presented flu symptoms. 3 presented flu symptoms today. We had 6 that presented over the weekend, and we want to do where we have isolated all officers.
Okay, so how has this affected your manpower and functionality to have 9 officers taken out of your formation?
It doesn't. The rule of thumb for Chris Noble is very simple. You work on an 80-20, 80% on, 20% off. So it will affect us down the road if we have, say we have another 15 or 20 officers down. However, I don't see that happening because we've put in place since Thursday and Friday when we were working at it, we put in place more rigidity to access to the station and impressing on all officers to the wearing of masks, etc. We've gotten temperature testers, so we do that at the door at entry.
6 persons in the health system are confirmed as positive cases. Pharmacist Carlos Novello, who also lives in San Pedro, has tested positive for COVID-19. And like teacher Vanessa Gladden, he is taken to social media to notify family, friends, and the public of his coronavirus status. Novello is also using this platform to raise awareness of the disease. He hopes that, quote, everyone takes it seriously and do all in their power to protect themselves, loved ones, and even the rest of our population, unquote. On Sunday, and then again today, Novello shared videos in which he's visibly short of breath, gasping for air. He also has a dry cough which comes and goes, but he's managing without hospitalization with the use of prescribed medication.
I want people to see it's not easy when you need to be grasping for a breath. It's not easy when you can't breathe well. We take it for granted every day, but it is what it is, and it's one of the symptoms that we face. I don't have it to an extent that I need hospitalization, so I'm very grateful for that. You too. Another good day. Just take care of yourself. You know, and take care of the family. Take it serious. Take this thing serious. I know some people think because you're young and you're strong, and because I get cussed out to tell people for use face masks. I get cussed out to work. I get cussed out by patients. They would tell me, me no need to do this, or because in here you don't have to wear masks and things. I get cussed out because I tell them no wear masks when they go on the workplace. use on a mask, take care of yourself, take all the vitamins. If you don't think about, if you don't care about yourself, think about your family, think about your neighbor, think about your friend, think about anybody where you encounter. Listen to Dr. Manza, I think you know what you need to about. Just take care of yourself, people, please, just take care of yourself. You understand me? Just take care of yourself.
But even as Novella pleads for the public to stay safe, a number of patients who have tested positive are complaining that their lives are being threatened. There is widespread cyberbullying and a stigma against those who have tested positive when their identities are known. While those who have made public their status believe it is the responsible thing for them to do, Novella says that there is need to support and have empathy during this time. As he endures the pain associated with the virus, he speaks about basic remedies available at home to help with some of the symptoms that may manifest.
I really ask for empathy for people who have been afflicted with this disease. I think that is the best thing we could do, and whatever support that we can show, whether it's emotional, whether it's just, hey, are you okay? We're here for you. You know, that honestly, that really helps a lot. It's very encouraging. And I'm also glad that none of us are really suffering from any serious symptoms. It can be managed at home, or it can be managed where we're isolated. Family member helped me with vaporizing, actually, so it really does help. For those who are having difficulty breathing, it helps. And if you can, I can tell you right now, hot water, you cut lime, put some lime in there, cut some onion, put it in there as well, and Vicks. Whether you like it or not, Vicks really does help, and then you just breathe in the vapor. It helps you breathe better. I have a very supporting community. First and foremost, I have a very supportive family. And very, very small circles of friends who are very, very supportive. And by extension, my fellow colleagues, my pharmacists, they have reached out to me, and I'm very grateful for that. You know, and I'm grateful for everyone. And if it's one thing that I have learned, is that San Pedro is a very caring community when it comes to times of emergencies. I have seen it, I have experienced it. The community comes alive, the community comes together, the community helps each other. The last thing we need as patients is to be bullied, is to be blamed, because we have already accepted it. Some of us have breaking down. I've recently had a breakdown, but it is what it is, and I have accepted the reality. And it's not easy to accept, but we must do our best, and we must follow the guidelines that they gave us.
The Ministry of Health also issued a statement on stigmatization. It warns that the psychological damage may be greater than the physical symptoms of the virus. Ministry of Health urges the public to be supportive instead of bullying, and asks those under threat to seek support for mental health if so required. The largest number of positive cases is in San Pedro due to a community spread. According to the Ministry of Health, the actual source of the current infections is unclear. But the ministry states that a number of cases are linked to the first cluster. The second cluster is related to the Living Word Church in San Pedro town. The number of confirmed and suspected symptomatic cases is being linked to a church service held around mid-July, and the contacts and those potentially exposed are being followed on the island. Now, as many as 42 active cases on the island are linked to the activities at the Allure nightclub between July 16th and 19th. Earlier today, Allure nightclub issued a statement stating that it has been using the best methods possible to sanitize and constantly clean the environment. Accordingly, people move the virus, and where there are people, there is a high risk of spreading it. Allure ends its statement urging people to stay home, be responsible, wear masks, and wash hands. Persons who were at the club during the period and are symptomatic are asked to call the ministry's hotline. Last week, the Director of Health Services discarded reports that a fishing tournament in San Pedro was a super spreader event for the virus. But the Minister of Tourism and Civil Aviation, Manuel Heredia Jr., over the weekend spoke to Reef Radio on another matter weighing on the minds of many since the COVID-19 outbreak in San Pedro. Heredia addressed the looming matter of a private plane that purportedly landed in Belize. The Prime Minister made the report during one of his press conferences last week, but later acknowledged it was not so. In his radio address, Heredia Jr. set the record straight, saying the Prime Minister was mistaken and misinformed. Heredia confirmed that the private plane did not land in Belize.
Prime Minister made a mistake when he said that a private aircraft had arrived and with a Texan and that this and the other, which was indeed, he was given false information. The media asked him if he was sure that that private aircraft arrived, and that is when he seemed to realize that something was wrong. But before I go into it, I must say that if any private or if any repatriation with the United or Delta that has been done, there is a protocol that is followed, which the Attorney General's ministry, who he is in charge of national security. National security is informed of the intention of such repatriation or such particular business owner that is coming or who owns any business in Belize and for specific reasons and needs to come. There was a protocol that was established with the repatriation. It was that you had national security, you had health and immigration that were contacted. And at that point, they will inform either myself or the Director of Civil Aviation that such a flight will be arriving. And all that we do, listen very carefully, all that we do is to give orders to the Belize Concession Company to open the airport. I am not the one that approves the flight because in normal circumstances, that might be the case, but in times of pandemic, the Oversight Committee holds control of everything. It was the same in San Pedro when we had the first cases, the first two cases, so the same way. We used to put our own things over, but it is the Oversight Committee that basically run things. And this time is no exception. In this particular case that they are speaking about, that private aircraft never did arrive. It never touched grounds in Belizean soil. That is clear. They can check the Department of Civil Aviation. They can check Belize Concession Company. They can check Immigration and Customs, and they will find out that it was a mistake that Prime Minister made.
Coming up, the body of a woman is found in a shallow grave in the south, and the popular A&R store closes in the free zone. The body of Julia Timotea Milian Moran was found inside a shallow grave over the weekend, and police believe her killer was well known to her. The mother of four, who is originally from Honduras, lived in the village of Santa Cruz, and police have arrested Jorge Leon from the village of Steadfast, who was last seen with her when she checked into the police station at the end of July. She had been charged for injuring one of Leon's daughters during a brouhaha in Steadfast. Milian was in a relationship with Leon, but tonight he's been charged for her murder. Here is News 5's Dwayne Moody with this report.
Over the weekend, a gruesome discovery was made on a farm off the Hummingbird Highway in the village of Steadfast. The decomposing body of Julia Timotea Milian Moran was found in a shallow grave about 20 minutes off the main path to a large farm in the village. There were no signs of injury on the body, but a post-mortem will determine the cause of death.
Police launched an investigation into the matter where they detained and interviewed one Jorge Leon, 55 years, also of Santa Cruz village, and also having an address in Steadfast village in the Stan Creek district. During the course of the investigation, police visited a farm at 16 miles on the Stan Creek Valley Road, where they found a shallow grave, and upon digging up that grave, the body of Julia Milian was found in an advanced state of decomposition. The body was removed from there and is awaiting a post-mortem examination at this time.
Milian is a Honduran national who lived in Santa Cruz village on the Southern Highway, but frequented Pomona village, which is in proximity to Steadfast. She was last seen alive on July 29th in Dangriga town in the company of the man that is in police custody. Her sister made a missing persons report 1 week later to the Independence Police.
On a Friday, sometime around 5:30 p.m., Independence Police received a missing person report from one Irma Milian, who reported that on the 30th of July, sometime in the evening, her sister Julia Milian Moran, 39 years, of Santa Cruz village, left home to an unknown destination and has not been seen or heard from since. Several attempts were made to contact her on her cell phone, which were not successful.
Jorge Leon has since been charged for the murder of Milian. He was last seen in the company of the deceased at the Dangriga police station when she went in to sign as part of a bail condition imposed. That charge is the result of an incident 1 month ago in which Milian injured one of Leon's daughters during an altercation in Steadfast. Milian was in a relationship with Leon, who lived with his wife and children in Steadfast. Former village chairman and neighbor to the Leon family says that there was a history of conflict between Leon's family and the deceased.
This lady used to come to the village, and came to go with Mr. Leon, man we call Washa.
What your first name?
Jorge Leon. They call nickname na Washa. And he may go to she, cause he got a wife, but he may go to she as one sweetheart. And one day the lady reached back in the village. Go look for him.
Who that?
Go look for Mr. Jorge.
Which lady?
The deceased.
What's her name again?
Miss Julia Milian. And when she come to the village, Jorge's wife and daughter and a whole kid attacked the lady. And the lady ended up being injured. The daughter, one of them, because she made defend herself.
When this happened?
It happened maybe 1 month ago, no way, I'm not sure, maybe 1 month ago.
Okay. And
she was, at the time, right now, she was going to court with them people, because they made the car on a court. So what she do?
Police are looking at all angles, but evidence so far implicates Jorge Leon.
We are aware that during the course of the investigation revealed that there seemed to have been some relationship between the two. We also know that the deceased had a matter before the court in relation to injuries caused to one of Leon's daughters. So that is an angle also being looked at during the course of the investigation.
Sir, have you found out anything about a history of conflict between Leon's family and the deceased?
Yes, we are being made aware of that, and hence the reason why there is an ongoing, or there was an ongoing court matter in relation to the two sides.
Is it believed that Leon acted alone in this instance?
At this point in time, we do not have any evidence to suggest otherwise, but the investigation is still ongoing and is in its early stages.
Dwayne Moody for News 5.
As COVID-19 cases go up in the country, economic activity slows down, and everywhere businesses are struggling to stay afloat. The government has rolled out a plan to assist micro, small and medium enterprises. But across the sector, larger companies are also feeling the pain, and some are already facing bankruptcy. ANR in the Corozal-Free Zone, which is registered as a separate company than the ANR in the districts, went belly up and has shut down. The store has been closed for months due to the pandemic, and business activity came to a screeching halt. Employees have been permanently terminated, and Managing Director Rosendo Urbina Jr. says that the loss is in the millions.
Basically, there is no economic activity in the free zone. We're only allowed to go in there and check to make sure that everything is okay physically, but we cannot open our doors for business, being that the free zone catered mainly to Mexicans. All workers have been permanently terminated there. We pay them off all their benefits. So basically, there is no economic activity, no sales, no revenue.
Okay.
So that company basically has gone bankrupt as it is.
The one at the free zone?
Yes, the one in the free zone.
Okay, and what would be the loss there in free zone?
That would be hard to quantify. In terms of what we've lost in revenues, sales, it would be in the millions of dollars.
Wow.
I wouldn't have a real figure. No.
According to Urbina Jr., ANR Enterprises has 7 branches across the country. The company employs over 200 persons. If the country goes into another lockdown, ANR says they will be forced to send home more employees and possibly close 1 or 2 of its branches.
Well, besides people not having the purchasing power, I guess, that they had before, no? Being that many people are out of a job. Besides that, we were having difficulty purchasing back-to-school items because of the foreign exchange problem, the shortage that we have in the country at this present moment. In terms of activity, we've seen initially when we reopened in May, business was dropped like 40 to 50% countrywide. Since then, it has gone up slightly. We probably are about 70% of what we used to sell. No? It depends on the region where you are. For example, Danguiga is probably the worst hit, and San Pedro, business really dropped a lot now. The other branches, it might be between 20 to 25% drop in sales overall.
Okay.
But we're making it up with groceries now. We've turned all the stores into groceries, so that's something new that we're doing at this point in time also.
Is that training up with like a grocery store, is that helping the company to keep afloat?
Yes. Actually, if we hadn't done that, we would probably still be around 50 to 60% down in our sales. Groceries accounting for about 25 to 30% of our gross sales right now, countrywide. We do have commitments with the banks in terms of loans, overdraft facilities and stuff like that. We do have over 200 employees that we employ countrywide, which is a big payroll on a weekly basis. So if they do lock us down again, basically we would be in serious problems.
And then that problem would trickle down to the 200 plus employees who would be made redundant.
Yes, of course. We would probably have to be to put a plan to terminate workers on a case-by-case basis. And even on a worst-case scenario, we might even have to close 1 or 2 stores to stay alive. No?
Meanwhile, almost 50,000 persons have applied for unemployment relief through the government of Belize amid the COVID-19 pandemic. As part of the second phase of the program, workers who've been laid off, as well as self-employed persons who've lost their jobs and means of income, are eligible for assistance. According to Dr. Carla Barnett, long-term unemployed persons who were not approved in Phase 1 have been referred to the Ministry of Human Development for consideration. For eligible persons, the financial relief to be provided in Phase 2 will be the same as before, $150 every 2 weeks for a period of 12 weeks.
The Unemployment Relief Program Phase 2 opened for applications a week ago, and we've had quite a number of applications already accepted in the system. The last I counted, it was upwards of 49,000 people have already applied. And so we've already begun the process of sifting out and pulling out the ones that are clearly well prepared and everything, and following up on those that require further information to be provided. But it's people are asking questions, people are passing on to us some of the issues that they're having, but we're expecting that to roll out reasonably smoothly, and we should see approvals and payments begin to be made by the end of this week or the latest the beginning of next week.
Financial assistance being provided from micro, small and medium enterprises through Beltrade, another of government's COVID-19 relief initiatives, hasn't been without its snags. According to Dr. Leroy Almendares, Executive Director of Beltrade, there were several glitches initially with the system being used to process business relief applications.
Initially what was happening, and of course, like any new system that is developed, you will find some bugs. So you were finding people who were at the same thing. You started the application and the application was incomplete. And again, sometimes either the press or connectivity was lost. And if connectivity was lost, then it means that the application would have gone. But what we're doing, because we can provide back-end support and get into the system, during this first 21 days, because it's 21 days, the application period is 21 days. So during this period, you're still getting assistance. As a matter of fact, all these glitches that we're finding, we're sending them off to CETO, working along with eData, which is preparing the system. So that was one of the main challenges.
Similarly, the Unemployment Relief Program in its first phase also ran into problems with the system being used. According to Dr. Carla Barnett, the biggest hiccup involved the inputting of information, including names and social security numbers, into the database correctly.
One of the biggest changes that we've made to the system that will allow us to not have so many errors in terms of input of name and social security number is that you have to put in your correct name and your correct social security number and your correct birth date for you to move past that screen and go to input an application. If you move past that screen, it means that nobody has used your number before. If you move past that screen and go to the end of the application process and then get back that you applied already, it's because you pressed 2 times. So those are really the big questions that we get from people making applications.
There's more news after the break, so stay tuned. There was a traffic fatality in Belize City on Saturday at midday. An elderly man was killed when a GSU vehicle ran over him on Morning Glory Street. Calvin Wright had fallen on the street and had not been able to get up when he was hit by a vehicle driven by PC Terrence Sutherland. Wright was rushed to the hospital but succumbed. Sutherland is facing charges including one for manslaughter by negligence. News 5's Hippolyta Novella spoke with a friend of Wright before his death.
68-year-old Calvin Wright was tragically killed on Saturday morning. A vehicle commandeered by a member of the gang suppression unit ran him over on Morning Glory Street, Belize City. It was 11:15 a.m. when his life was ended.
PC Terrence Sutherland was driving a police mobile on Morning Glory Street in Belize City when he ran over a male person who was seated on the road. The male person was thereafter taken to the KHMH for treatment, where he died thereafter.
Wright was reportedly in the middle of the street. The elderly man had fallen and remained seated on the ground.
I was home when a friend came and told me, "Gosh, Mr. Mark just got knocked down." When I went there, the body has already left from the scene and went to the hospital. All I found was an old tennis that I gave him, 1 foot 2, an old tennis that I gave him. That's all I found there. He got only problem. He looked like he had a weak in the knee or something. Because sometimes when he walk, he either get tired and he tumble along or he trip. Because that's one of the problems he have, right? He can't get up right away when he tumble along.
One resident told News 5 that Wright would walk Morning Glory Street on a daily basis. He would often fall and her children would give him a helping hand to get back on his feet. This time, however, no one was there to assist. But how is it that the driver of the GSU vehicle, PC Terrence Sutherland, did not see a human being seated in the middle of the street in the middle of the day?
So sometime he got to the one, if they made a compound, really high speed when they holler lane or whatsoever.
Yes, it is an accident. An investigation was conducted and that led to the charges. Again, it was an accident. The police were doing patrols in that area at the time, and PC Sutherland ran over this person.
PC Sutherland has been charged with drove motor vehicle without due care and attention, manslaughter by negligence, and causing death by careless conduct. Reporting for News 5, Hippolyta Novello.
Also here in Belize City, after 3 this morning, Trevor Gill was chopped on his hands and head. Gill was in deep slumber at his nephew's house on New Road when he came under attack from an intruder who made his way inside the house through an unlocked door. Gill was taken to the KHMH for medical treatment. News 5's Dwayne Moody has the following report.
A home invasion in Belize City has left one man hospitalized with chop wounds to the head and hands. Trevor Gill was sleeping when an assailant entered into a house on New Road via an unsecured door and inflicted the chop wounds. Gill's sister got the call just after the incident happened.
I got a phone call from my brother stating that they chopped my next brother in the head. And I say, why, what you do? And then he said he don't know, then just call him until he made sleep and then chop her in the head. So I really don't know what caused it. I don't know whether the problem, but that why here. I gone to the hospital and I see I got his head band up. Tell me how the boy come in at the house while he made sleep and chop him. He don't make out the face or whatever. I don't know.
He was talking?
Yeah, he good. He didn't talk. He made cry because he say the boy chant sign I sleep.
After inflicting the injuries, the assailant fled the scene. Gill then screamed for help and was assisted to the Carl Hirschner Memorial Hospital.
Police visited the KHMH where they saw Trevor Gill, 37 years, with chop wounds to the head and hands. He reported that he was sleeping at a friend's house on New Road, and at some point a male person entered the house and inflicted the injuries to him. The male person thereafter fled from the area. Trevor Gill is in a stable condition.
The incident came as a shock to Gill's family because he lives in Mango Creek and was only visiting for a few days when he was injured in the wee hours of today. Luckily, he survived the attack.
That I like for him, and then I see if he didn't have any problem, he call me and tell me, and I say, who or what, and what happened, I think, but he not have no problem with nobody. He didn't even live here, he live with a Mango Creek. He only come for the weekend. Say me going back Friday because they wait for something from somebody way figure one money by Friday. I don't know. That way tell me yesterday when they come eat.
Police say that there is no suspect at this time, but investigation is ongoing to determine if he was in fact the intended target of the assault or simply at the wrong place at the wrong time.
No suspect at this time.
Could it have been a case of mistaken identity where, you know, Mr. Gill is in this person's home and maybe that person was the intended target?
We do not know. All we know is that he was sleeping there and he was attacked.
My brother don't know sin. Been at jail, he do this, he do that. And I say good, but he not bad either. Just like everybody else want to send him picnic, no bad. But end of the day, that my brother and I love my brother bad. And if he out there to my brother, this innocent lady hear me, I want you to know why. I want to take it to good Lord in prayer.
Dwayne Moody for News 5.
Is the MS-13 gang marking its territory in Belmopan? The Belize Police Department doesn't believe so. In recent weeks, the gang has been tagging buildings and public spaces in Belmopan, and the most recent happened over the weekend at the Belmopan Nazarene Church. But this time, the gang has also left behind some ammunition on the church grounds. The police doesn't believe this is a direct message to the congregation or pastor of that church, but instead that the bullets may have been accidentally left behind. Police were called out to the church around 11 on Sunday morning, and today ACP Joseph Maivet says the vandalism is random, but they are investigating.
Police were called to the Nazarene Church on Garza Street, Belmopan, where they observed at the front of the church several graffiti that was sprayed onto the building marked MS-13. And whilst in the area conducting searches, police also discovered 10 9mm rounds of ammunition and one 7.62 round of ammunition. We are seeking several suspects in relation to this graffiti, as several other areas in Belmopan were seen with this graffiti.
So what do you make of the ammunition there? Was that a random placement? Does that seem like a targeted, sending a message kind of move?
We believe they had probably fallen out of the pocket of one of those persons involved, as it is also believed that this act was carried out during the night, as the person who initially made the report secured the church sometime around 8 p.m. on Saturday night and then left the area.
So this tagging of buildings with these gang signs, what do you make of this?
Well, we have seen a few in Belmopan which are under investigation by the anti-gang task force, and where those persons are found, certainly charges will be levied against them. One for the graffiti, and we would then try to establish their affiliation with these gangs before other charges are preferred against them.
So you consider it just random graffiti, tagging of buildings?
At this point in time,
of, gangs kind of like asserting their presence?
At this point in time, we do believe that it is just persons going around spraying the different buildings as opposed to persons marking territory.
So should residents be on high alert and cautious of these gang elements in Belmopan?
I would not go as far as to say that, because certainly we haven't found any residents that has been targeted by those spraying the graffiti. It is usually public buildings or buildings that are not necessarily occupied on a 24 hours basis by persons.
Maivet told the press today that they are looking at surrounding communities as a result of the tagging of buildings. Since last year, a small unit of the anti-gang team was assigned to Belmopan, and several persons have been charged under the gang regulations. But what does the pastor of Belmopan Nazarene Church think of its gang tags on his church? Well, that pastor happens to be our media colleague Louis Wade of Plus TV. Today, Wade said that he doesn't believe the tags or the bullets were targets launched at his church, but thinks those were strategically placed. Here's how he explains it.
I immediately sensed that it was not a message directly at us, but they wanted us to help get the word out. So there was no sense of immediate danger, but a sense of urgency on behalf of the community.
Is there any reason why a gang in marking territory would choose a church to do so?
They chose the church that is close to the media, online, thousands of people online each week. That area had just been painted a few days before, and it is right on the walkway heading to the park. And so they chose a church, they chose a park, they chose right next to the police station and several other places, in my opinion, very public places, deliberately and strategically done to get the attention of the community. At our doorstep, there were 10 bullets. One of them, the largest bullet, was placed in the center, and the other ones were strategically placed on both sides.
So the police have said that the bullets would have fallen out of the perpetrator's pockets. What's your opinion?
The police have not even come back to me, nor have they questioned me on my thoughts. Nothing was rudimentary or arbitrary about what was done. It was very strategic. We work very closely with the entire Belmopan community. There are no personal or community conflict.
When we come back, a San Pedro police officer takes to social media to complain that officers have been left in the cold. As you heard at the top of the news, 5 police officers attached to the San Pedro Police have tested positive for COVID-19. But several others are also out of work and in isolation after they started to experience flu-like symptoms. Superintendent Christopher Noble told the press today that they're checking on those officers and have made the Employee Assistance Program available to them. But one police officer took to Facebook over the weekend to share his frustration. He writes, quote, "We've been going through it here in San Pedro and nobody cares about us being frontline workers." He continues, "We as San Pedro Police Station should be setting standards, and where is our standards?" Unquote. In a statement, he expressed concerns about taking the virus home to his family and begged for help through his post. Superintendent Noble was asked about the statement shared by his officer.
I saw the post as him trying to reach out to somebody for some sort of assistance. Manuel is a part of our program because of his condition. Now, he does have other issues. I just spoke to Manuel, and the closest I can come to is that I was chastising him about behavior. But that is not to say that everybody follows in the same. He has friends that he was out with that have tested positive, including police officers, and police officers that are now symptomatic. So whatever he posted, and like luck would have it, I'm not privy to Facebook, but I did get a screenshot of some information on it. And I can't say why he would have made the post. I can't say what made him make the post. He is since been in quarantine or in isolation for about 2 days because he got back his results, I believe, yesterday. And he is still having some difficulties. Not to say difficulties departmentally.
A robber targeted a small grocery store this weekend around 10 on Sunday morning. Belmopan police were called out to Tai San's shop where an armed thief held up the proprietor of the establishment. It is the second time robbers have hit the store. ACP Joseph Maivet tells us more.
Police were called to the scene of a robbery at Tai San's store on the South Ring Road of Belmopan, where the proprietor reported to police that sometime around 10 a.m., a slim-built male person wearing a camouflage jacket and a reflective vest and a motorcycle helmet entered the establishment and thereafter pulled out a handgun and demanded money. And as a result, he relieved them of an undisclosed amount of money along with a cell phone. And thereafter, he exited the building and mounted the back of a blue in color motorcycle and thereafter made good his escape. Police are investigating this matter and are following several leads in relation to the investigation.
Our records show that the shop was robbed almost 2 years ago, back in 2018. In recent weeks, we have been reporting on a string of robberies across the country, including Belmopan. Today, police encouraged business owners to be vigilant and call the police if they observe suspicious persons around their property.
We do encourage business people to be more vigilant, and as you notice that some businesses have put up on their entrance that no peak caps or hoods and sunglasses are allowed. So that would be dependent on the business whether or not they want to put those policies in place. However, if there is any suspicious activity outside any business, we would encourage them to immediately call the police.
Coming up after the break, land woes in San Marcos Village. Residents want their piece of land.
In these challenging
In the south, residents of San Marcos Village are tonight upset and taking matters into their own hands. Dozens of families have started to occupy lands along the Southern Highway, just outside of Punta Gorda. The residents say that they are tired of politicians sending surveyors to their community to survey the land for distribution. They're frustrated that the lands are given to political cronies. Over the weekend, a group of villagers led by Juan Caal began clearing a portion of the land.
For so much years, we have lived under political regime where they favor their delegates, they favor their cronies. And what about the common young man? What about the common young lady we want a piece of house lot? Because this is what we are tired of have to deal with the politics that always wins and overcomes everything, and the system that is not given an opportunity and a chance to own something. It has to stop. The young looking at right now are the future. And if we cannot organize ourselves as young people to come and stand for something, to stand for what we truly believe is ours, nobody else will. You will hear a lot of loud mouths speaking out there, speaking out loud. But that's what they do. Speak out loud. There is no action. This is what you're seeing here. Action is going to take place. We're going to take charge of the situation. We will believe this is what we rightfully own. Not only because of, as young people, as young Belizeans, it's our constitutional right to enjoy and to have land access.
Villagers say that they will no longer tolerate neglect and call on the powers that be to give them what they say rightfully belongs to them.
We not make other people from far come and take what for we. This stuff for we. We are young people, we talk about for we future.
We now as the youth have to get up. We can't make other man from like big rich man them, they just come and buy land and they just keep on like neglecting us. Now that have to stop. We have to put a stop and end to it now. We as a youth, we have to come up strong and fight for this piece of land that what we are doing at this moment. That is my position. Yeah. We need to fight for it.
On Friday, we told you about the University of Belize's faculty and staff union's attempt to kickstart negotiations with the UB's Board of Trustees and president. The union feels that they're not being welcomed to the table as UB charts its way forward in light of a shortfall of $7 million in revenue. This morning, the union sent out a release outlining a number of concerns about teaching assignments and workloads that are yet to be settled, as well as the lack of infrastructure to facilitate the move to online classes. The UB-FSU has thereby taken a position that this semester should start on September 7th, in line with other universities offering online classes and a 13-week semester of fully online delivery instated. But UB sent out a release this afternoon to say that August 17th remains as the date for the reopening of classes and that registration has commenced. President of UB-FSU, Dr. Piyosaki, says there is union busting.
One of our members has informed us that she is being told that her terms of employment at the university is going to be finished, and to be terminated, is being terminated, and she is given the option of either you take this voluntary separation or you go to redundancy, and they are forcing her to do the legal separation. So it says it's not good. It's not bad, right? The ex gratia looks okay. You get a little bit more, all that stuff. But here's the issue. The issue is this woman who is working there has been working there for 14 and a half years. So she's only 6 months shy of qualifying for pension and pension benefits. For the unforeseeable future, this young woman would have lost her ability to get pension. So now the other thing that goes to that in terms of union busting is that they're targeting people who are on contract. So here's another thing that we need to really think about, right? 2 or 3 years ago, the president changed the employment scheme for the University of Belize. The faculty and staff handbook has us as permanent, temporary, or temporary full-time, depending on what you're hired as. Permanent, temporary, or full-time. You're appointed, and that is usually that is your permanence is determined based on your performance and all that stuff after so many years, and you can go up the ladder and make yourself. When about 2 or 3 years ago, the idea of contracts was introduced. Now you say, okay, contracts have a deadline, they have a timeline, they have a life, a life, so a fixed date when it ends. That is all good and well, but here's the problem, Andrea. The University of Belize has programs that are approved, academic programs especially that are approved. Each one of those programs are approved, and within the approval of these things, specific posts are established substantively, meaning that without those posts, the program cannot work. The quality would not be there. That is where you hire these people permanently. So you appoint them to these permanent posts, and if they don't perform, you get rid of them, you get a new one. There's a mechanism for that. What has happened since then now is that these people are being hired against these substantive posts on contract, which is now making it easy for the president to say, okay, your contract is up, we don't have to renew it, we're not obligated to do so. And yeah, of course, that's a good argument, but this goes to the heart of what you just said as union busting.
And that's the news. Tonight's broadcast is available in both text and streaming video at channel5belize.com. You can also connect with us on our Facebook page at News 5 Live. I'm Marlene Cuellar. Thanks for joining us. And from all of us here at News 5, please remember to wash your hands, keep your social distance, and stay safe. Good night.